When it comes to disaster, being prepared is just as important as the response, if not more. So was Turkey prepared for a natural disaster on the scale that it witnessed yesterday? There was an earthquake in the country in 2011 as well. Hundreds of people lost their lives. Erdogan was then the prime minister, and he had blamed shoddy construction for the high death toll. He said, and I'm quoting, municipalities, constructors and supervisors should now see that their negligence amounts to murder. What happened on Monday under Erdogan's leadership was no different. Nearly 3,500 people lost their lives in Turkey on Monday. Over 20,000 have been injured. How many of them were victims of a natural disaster? And how many died because of human error? Turkey is mourning this terrible tragedy, and our heart goes out to the victims and their families, what they are going through at this point. But this is a question that we must ask tonight, because we cannot let emotions cloud accountability after all. In the last 24 hours, we have seen buildings collapse and tumble in Turkey. Airports have been destroyed, highways have been split open, gas pipelines have burst into flames. Is nature at fault in every case? It's not. There is no doubt the earthquakes that rocked Turkey were massive. 7.8 is no joke, and this was followed by more tremors. But can a 7.8 magnitude earthquake raze entire neighborhoods? Over 3,000 buildings became heaps of rubble. Was this also because the construction was flawed and flimsy? I fully understand that you cannot expect construction on the fault lines to withstand a mega earthquake, let alone 3 massive earthquakes. But what you can expect is for the government to prepare the buildings for heavy tremors, because these geological fault lines are known. Did the Turkish government compel the builders to take the necessary precautions, which are, to take one example, compulsory in Japan? Or did it fail in its duty? Let's just go back in history. In 1999, Turkey was hit by a massive earthquake. Some 17,000 people died. An audit concluded that buildings had come crumbling down because the contractors used cheap materials. Also, the government had loose building codes, and there was zero nationwide response strategy. That was 1999. Cut to February 2023. 3 massive earthquakes hit Turkey within 24 hours. And this time as well, buildings fall like a Jenga block. This time as well, neighborhoods completely disappear from the map. Basically, nothing changed in these 24 years. No steps were taken to ensure the people's basic safety. I'll tell you what's deplorable. The Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's party, the AKP, or Justice and Development Party, actually rose to power on the tide of anger that followed the 1999 earthquake. The AKP had promised change, safety, reform. The voters believed this promise. The AKP was elected to office 3 years after that earthquake. But did the party live up to that promise? If it had, this child would not have had to be pulled out of the rubble. And as I speak, thousands are still trapped. For the rescuers, it is a race against time. Meet Hulusi Ibrahim. When the first earthquake struck, Hulusi thought doomsday had arrived. And before he could realize, the building collapsed on him. Hulusi found himself trapped under the rubble. His wife was under him. The 63-year-old somehow managed to find a way out. but his wife was unresponsive.
My wife isn't there. One should never give up on hope, but most probably she died. There is always hope, but I stayed with her for 3 hours and spent another hour to get out. I didn't get any response from her for 3 hours. I don't know. I can't bring myself to say, but I don't have hope.
Who is to be blamed? Hulusi's wife may have escaped this tragic fate had Erdogan ensured his people's safety, had his party delivered on its promises. The fact is, forget about building resistance against earthquakes. Critics say Erdogan encouraged oversight. Why do you think he would do that? Because buildings also helped build Erdogan's story. That he had changed Turkey's skyline, built homes for the people. He had created a more developed country, a more European Turkey, a Turkey that was capable of leading the Muslim world. Erdogan time and again described the construction industry as the economy's jewel, and today people remain trapped under the rubble of these dreams. You see, on paper, everything was perfect. In 2018, Turkey had passed an earthquake legislation. Specifications for buildings in seismic zones had been revised not once, not twice, but 7 times between 1947 and 2019. There was scope for seismic risk reduction at the national level, but in practice, it was all illusion. In practice, politics took precedence. In practice, safety was sacrificed for propaganda. In 2018, Erdogan's government introduced zoning amnesty. It legalized buildings built in violation of the rules, safety rules. All a contractor had to do to legalize his building was to pay the government. 13 million structures were legalized. The government made money, secured vote banks, and today the people are paying the price with their lives. This is Hatay province, a day after the earthquakes. And this is the Eskandaran port. It's on fire. The truth is, you cannot blame the mounting death toll on the 7.8 magnitude earthquake alone. Not even on the 2 earthquakes that followed, or the 146 plus aftershocks. There is more to the tragedy than meets the eye. The earthquakes cracked open the Pandora's box. They have exposed the government's failure to implement building codes, safety standards. The tremors have given ammo to the critics, those who like to shine light on the unprecedented levels of corruption under Erdogan. And where does this leave the country's politics? What happens to the parliamentary and the presidential elections? They are scheduled for the 14th of May. Will the country still go ahead with the polls? In case it does, what will be the outcome? Could Erdogan find himself out of office? Even before the first tremors were felt, voters were already unhappy with their leader. Because Turkey is battling an economic crunch, and that's the worst since Erdogan's party took charge following the 1999 earthquake. Year-on-year inflation is up 80%, and the Turkish lira has fallen by 30% against the dollar. Now, Monday's earthquakes hit the country's poorest and least developed areas. It affected people who were already struggling to make their ends meet. If Erdogan's response is strong, if it is effective, if he is able to rehabilitate the victims and give them cash injections, then Erdogan may be able to portray an image of effective leadership. The president has wasted no time in announcing a state of emergency. If Erdogan is able to whip up a sense of national solidarity, he could capitalize on it as and when the votes are cast. And if not, the voters could be unsparing. The 1999 earthquake led to the AKP's rise. Monday's earthquakes could find history repeating with the AKP on the receiving side. So this is a test for Erdogan, also a lesson for other countries. Seismologists will tell you that the best way to study earthquakes is by studying a real earthquake. What are the lessons countries can learn from Turkey? I'm talking especially about countries in the Pacific Ring of Fire. To start with, don't be like Turkey. Prioritize safety, build better, perhaps learn from Japan. Many like to call it the world leader in earthquake-proof buildings. What is it that Japan does that other countries can also follow? The buildings use steel frames instead of a concrete core. Many buildings are enveloped in mesh structures. Light bulbs are mostly covered. So even if a bulb breaks because of an earthquake, people are protected from the breakaway pieces. Construction contractors know exactly what they need to do, starting with putting their money on safety. So what I will do instead is leave you with some interesting facts on earthquakes. Do you know Mount Everest moved 3 centimeters because of an earthquake? In 2015, Nepal was hit by a 7.8 magnitude earthquake, also shrunk the mountain by an inch. That is how strong earthquakes can be. Turkey also faced the brunt of our 7.8 magnitude earthquake. Seismologists say the earthquake had the energy equivalent to around 32 Hiroshima atomic bombs. Earthquakes can not only move your tallest mountain, but also change the length of your day. The BBC reports that the 8.9 magnitude earthquake that struck Japan in 2011 altered the distribution of the Earth's mass. So much so that our planet started rotating slightly faster, and our day became 1.8 microseconds shorter. Also, as a result of the 2020 Chile earthquake, the city of Concepcion moved 10 feet to the west. And if the tectonic plates continue moving the way they are, San Francisco and Los Angeles will meet in several million years. San Francisco is already moving towards LA by 2 inches per year, courtesy of the movement in the San Andreas Fault. So that is Earthquakes 101 for you. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.